Ms. Eisenhower, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted that so many of the friends and members of the family of the two ladies we're going to honor today could be present with us. And we're particularly happy on this day when we create two First Ladies of the Army to have with us the distinguished, one of the former distinguished First Ladies of the land, Mrs. Eisenhower. I'd also like to call your attention to the fact that we have with us today two former directors of the Women's Army Corps and four former chiefs of the Army Nurses Corps. And I believe one of those chiefs, Colonel Florence Blanchfield, is the first Army nurse commissioned officer. As you all know, on May 15th, President Nixon nominated the First Lady Generals in United States history. I think we're particularly fortunate to have two such able and attractive ladies to mark this turning point in Army history. Today, there are approximately 12,000 members of the Women's Army Corps on active duty, and there are approximately 5,000 in the Army Nurses Corps. Of them, 20% are men. Both nurses and WACs, as you all know, serve the Army throughout the world and make a major contribution to the performance of our mission. We in the Army recognize that women can play an even greater role in the Department of the Army. And one of the areas on which we are putting emphasis today is trying to restructure some of our jobs so that we can be more flexible and have more opportunities for women, generally. At this time, I'd like to turn the ceremony over to the Chief of Staff, General Westmoreland.
Mrs. Eisenhower, members of Congress, distinguished guests. As Secretary Reeser has stated, this is a historic moment for the Army Nurse Corps, the Women's Army Corps, the United States Army, and indeed all the services. Here are two women who have dedicated themselves to the service of their country, as did those who preceded them, and as do those for whom they are responsible. This promotion ceremony recognizes two successfully outstanding ladies as well as two groups of women, two great groups of women, both important elements of our Army. The Army Nurse Corps, the senior of these two organizations, can trace its heritage back to 1775, when the Army was given authority to hire contract nurses. However, the Nurse Corps was not officially established until 1901. Since that time, Army nurses have established and sustained a proud record. Yet theirs has been a long, slow path in achieving just recognition. The Army Nurse Corps was in existence for a quarter of a century before its members were given the privilege of Army retirement. And 43 years passed before Army nurses would receive the commission and pay equivalent to male officers. Army nurses in peace and in 4 wars have met a challenge to nursing made nearly 120 years ago in an interesting letter from the British Secretary of War to Florence Nightingale. It said, I quote, "The difficulty of finding women equal to the task, full of horror, and requiring besides knowledge and goodwill, great energy and great courage will be great. The task of ruling them and introducing system among them will be great. And not the least will be the difficulty of making the whole work smoothly with the medical and military authorities. Now I believe we can point with pride to the fact that the United States Army Nurse Corps, the Army Medical Corps, and the United States Army has surmounted these obstacles. Colonel Hays' career exemplifies the dedication to duty that Army nurses have exhibited for almost 7 decades. As an editorial read in Colonel Hays' hometown paper, Allendale, Pennsylvania, the Army Nurse Corps has worn stars for years. But during Anna Mae Hays' 6 years of service, during her first 6 years of service, she added to her professional knowledge through practical experience in one of the most demanding areas of nursing, the operating room. She put her operating room experience to the supreme test in Korea with 56 other nurses during the defense of the Pusan perimeter in 1950. There, with her energy and courage, she helped save the lives of countless American soldiers. Later, she served as one of the special nurses assigned to President Eisenhower when he was a patient in Walter Reed Hospital. Holding various supervisory and administrative positions for the next several years, she sharpened her administrative and managerial skills, thus preparing herself for higher responsibility. After serving as Assistant Chief of the Army Nurse Corps, she obtained her master's degree in nursing from Catholic University here in Washington. She assumed on September 1967 her present position as Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. As Chief, she is responsible for our Army nurses, both male and female, who continue their primary mission of providing for the welfare of our soldiers. Colonel Hays, it is a great pleasure for me now to join with Lieutenant General Al Jenkins, Surgeon General of the United States Army, in pinning on your new insignia of rank. If you would take your position, and if the Adjutant General would read the promotion order.
Headquarters Department of the Army, 11 June, 1970. The following individual is authorized and is directed to wear the uniform and insignia of a Brigadier General, United States Army, effective this date, by order of the Secretary of the Army, W.C. Westmoreland, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff.
We ask you all to sit down during the pinning, please, so the photographers can record this properly. Do it again. Do it again, please.
I hereby establish a new protocol for congratulating Lady General.
Your protocol.
Anna Mae, now, with stars on your shoulder and your flag presented by the Secretary of the Army, perhaps you would like to make a few remarks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your kind remarks. General Westmoreland, thank you for your magnificent tribute to Army nurses. Mrs. Eisenhower, Colonel Hoisington, members of Congress, members of my family, and distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to thank General Westmoreland and General Jennings for honoring the Army Nurse Corps by pinning these stars on my shoulders. And I am grateful to each of you for joining us this morning and sharing this memorable occasion for the Army Nurse Corps. I shall wear these stars proudly, but with deep humility, for I know full well they represent no special merit of mine, but rather the dedicated, selfless, and often heroic efforts of Army nurses throughout the world since 1901, in time of peace and in time of war. There are enough points in these stars to call to notice all those who deserve public recognition for having played a special part in bringing them to rest upon my shoulders this morning. However, I would like to express deep appreciation to our President, Mr. Nixon, and to the members of Congress, particularly those who serve on the Senate and House Armed Services Committees. And I would also like to acknowledge the sustained efforts of the American Nurses Association in helping to bring this distinction to military nursing, thereby enhancing the prestige of the profession of nursing. The Army Nurse Corps owes a special debt to the former Surgeons General of the Army, particularly Lieutenant General Leonard D. Heaton, and to my predecessors as Chief of the Army Nurse Corps. As Mr. Secretary stated, 4 of the former chiefs are present this morning. Foremost credit, however, must go to those who are directly responsible that this signal honor has been bestowed upon the Army Nurse Corps at this moment in its history. And so, to the Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Stanley R. Resor, to the Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General William C. Westmoreland, and to our Surgeon General, Lieutenant General Hal B. Jennings, Jr., I wish to simply say thank you in behalf of all Army nurses everywhere. Those on active duty, those in the reserve components, and those who are retired. As for myself, I shall not betray the confidence that has been placed in me. Albert Einstein once said, "I must remind myself 100 times each day that what I am, I owe to the lives of other men, both living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order that I may give in the same manner that I receive," unquote. This has been and will continue to be my philosophy as long as I am able to serve my country. I pledge I shall devote my efforts toward achieving the goals of the Army Medical Department, the United States Army, and our nation. Thank you so very much.
"22 years ago tomorrow, President Truman established the Women's Army Corps as a permanent component of the regular Army and Army Reserve of the United States. But the proud history of our women soldiers predates that by 6 years. Their birthday began on 14th of May, 1942, when the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps was first established. If family tradition influences a person's future, Elizabeth Hoisington was destined for the Army. Her father and 3 brothers were West Point graduates. I suppose she would also have attended West Point had she been able to meet the physical qualifications. But not to be daunted, she enlisted as a private in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps shortly after it was created. She attended Officer Candidate School and was commissioned a 3rd officer in the auxiliary. In September 1943, shortly after President Roosevelt signed the bill establishing the Women's Army Corps as a component of the Army, she was promoted to second lieutenant. As one of 150,000 WACs serving around the world during World War II, she spent over 2 years during the war in Europe, where she received the first Croix de Guerre from a grateful French government. She was the first WAC officer to enter Paris just 5 days after the city had been liberated. She, with 4 enlisted women, established the first WAC detachment in Europe, which later grew to a strength of 1,500. For her outstanding service during that period, she was the first WAC to receive the Bronze Star in the European Theater of Operations. During 1948, the first year in which WACs were accepted into the regular Army, then Major Horsington served under General MacArthur in the Far East Command. Returning to the United States in 1950, she held positions of progressively higher responsibility for the next 7 years, until she was selected to attend the Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas in 1957. After graduation, she was assigned to important staff positions here in the Pentagon and in the European Command. After attending the Army Management course at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, she became commander of the WAC Center and commandant of the WAC School at Fort McClellan, Alabama. As director of the Women's Army Corps since August 1966, she has been and remains responsible for the administration of WACs serving on active duty around the world. Her career from private to brigadier general has been in large measure the history of the Women's Army Corps. Colonel Horsington, in recognition of your years of outstanding and devoted service to the nation and the position of responsibility you now hold, I consider it an honor to change your insignia of rank to that of Brigadier General. Your mother, Mrs. Gregory Horsington, I hope, will assist me. I would ask the Adjutant General to read the order.
Headquarters, Department of the Army, 11 June 1970. The following individual is authorized and directed to wear the uniform and insignia of a Brigadier General, United States Army, effective this date. Colonel Elizabeth P. Hoisington, Women's Army Corps. By order of the Secretary of the Army, W.C. Westmoreland, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff.
In accordance with the well-established Army... I'll be back later. I'll be back later. Elizabeth, would you like to make some remarks?
Mr. Secretary, General Westmoreland, Mrs. Eisenhower, and of course, General Hayes, members of my family, distinguished guests, and friends. I'm holding in my hand these eagles that my father wore. Today, I am accepting these stars in the name of the Women's Army Corps. Not just the women who are serving today, but the women who have served in our past, and they're ably represented today by former directors Mary Halloran and Emily Gorman, and by the president of the WAC Veterans Association, Mrs. Florence Land from California. I brought with me today, Mr. Secretary, the members of my family and my office staff, including my career branch. Each one of these individuals has dedicated his and her career to the military service
either as a member of the military service or as a dependent. So you see, I didn't take time actually to add together all this years of service to our Army. I will have to recognize the Air Force because my brother Perry is a retired Air Force general. I have run lickety-brindle down the road and have never been able to catch up with him. I would like you to know, though, he is older than I am. I am leaving shortly after this ceremony to go to Fort McClellan, Alabama, to the home of the Women's Army Corps, because I think it's fitting that I should share this day with my people at WAC Center and WAC School, because here in Alabama we have assembled the largest group of the members of our Corps, and where else could you put on a better parade? Just think of those ruffles and flourishes in the General's March, but I have to tell you that the story's ruined a little bit because one of my former bosses, General Connor, is going to be there, and he has 3 stars. I should recognize General Kerwin, who is the DESPER, who is my boss, and I thank you, General Kerwin, for making this moment possible, too. Down at WAC Center, since I've been the director, and of course you can imagine I've been down there many, many times, at one of the basic training graduations, the enlisted women wanted to sing me a song. And in this song, they talked about Pallas Athene. Now, to many of you, you have no idea who Pallas Athene is. Pallas Athene is the symbol, the insignia of our Corps. It's a great day in the Army when we put on the uniform of our country, and remember, there are not many women around the world who are privileged to wear the uniform of their country. And we are not complete in uniform until we put on the insignia. The U.S. on the right, standing for us, and Pallas Athene on the left, standing for our Corps. And in this song that the women sang to me, they talked about Pallas Athene will shine. And when it was my turn to tell them how lovely the song was, and it was lovely, and they have this great spirit, these young women coming into the Corps, I just wonder if the rest of you could beat me in the fact that I have the average age of my 12,000 enlisted women is 20. How would you like 12,000 teenagers? They pick up this great spirit in our Corps. And Pallas Athene is really one of the ways we do this, because she is great. She is our Corps. And the women in this song sang that Pallas Athene will shine. And I came right back to them and said, Pallas Athene will not shine unless you make her shine by the good job that you do in the United States Army. And I've used this as my theme as I've traveled around the world to talk to my WAC enlisted women, to tell them that this is the symbol of our Corps. We've used this Pallas in our re-enlistment poster, saying that this is your Corps. Without you, without your dedication, without your experience, it could not exist. So Pallas Athene is very special to us, and we try to make her shine each day by the job we do for the United States Army. And I say, and I'm sure the rest of you would join with me today to say, Mr. Secretary, General Westmoreland, Pallas Athene is shining brighter today than she has in her history.
I would ask Joe Hayes and General Washington if they would take their position so that they may receive your individual congratulations.
Well, well, that's one thing for one woman to catch another. Congratulations. Congratulations. Marvelous speech.
We're both excited today. She's an Army nurse. Marvelous. So both have it. General Hayes,
I'd like to introduce my son, Greg. No, sir. I'm his brother.